Welcome back. It is Friday, and you know what that means Friday transformation. So, before you kick it and get your self care moments this weekend, we want to provide you with some food for thought, something you can ponder and chew on over the weekend, because Friday transformation is all about that. Giving you transformative information to help you thrive. But of course, Coach Mr. Adam wants you to get your self care moments in this weekend. So make sure you get that in. And today, yet again, we have an amazing guest. And this guest has been on this platform before for a Monday motivation, and she dropped a gang of gems. So if you haven't checked that video out, go back and check that one out before you check this one out. But today we're going to stay in the same alignment of financial wellness, but we're going to kind of go into the space of men being the sole provider and the stigmas behind all of that. Like we're going to go all of that on that one. So of course, we have Nia's perspective coming into the building. We got to give her the camp clap real quick. And of course, thank you, Nia, for joining me again on the platform, joining us again for this April month of men's mind, body, the blueprint of well being. And you are really the owner of all our financial wellness for the month of April. And I couldn't be prouder because that last session we did, you dropped a gang of gems for our people. So today, you know the topic, right? And that topic is men being the sole provider and the stigma around many of those things. So, Nia, what you got for us?
So again, I still want to thank you for having me and just loving the work that you're doing. And I feel like it's so needed. I feel like men don't get the moments that they need. So I think it's dope that that's what you're doing for the month. What I want to start off with saying is that I think that a lot of men, because of the stigma, because of I mean, they even have songs like Music Soul Child. He was taught that the definition of a man was to never cry, work till you tired, always
Mhm.
provide. So I feel like that's what a lot of us were taught. That's what a lot of us, were told. And I think because they're, operating in that space, they don't think it's okay. They think it's not okay to be like, oh, well, I might have messed up this month, or oh, well, I might have dug a hole. And I've seen it in my clients where the problem happened, okay, and they went a month and they was like, okay, I can do this. I'm gonna get this, I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna get us back on track. But then they didn't. And then they go and they don't go and talk to their spouse about it or go talk to anybody about it because for some people, they think that that's a sign of weakness. And now we're 3 months down the line, now you're in foreclosure. You know what I mean? Where you could, and even, full disclosure, I did that as a young person and I didn't know that I had people to go and talk to. So I think that that's the first part of knowing that, yes, you can be the sole provider and still talk about it. Like just sole provider doesn't equal perfect. Sole provider doesn't mean that you never have any problems or that everything is just always great. Um, but I think that it's mentally, you see it here, you see it on TV, you hear it in the music. You probably got family members who think that way because a lot of us were raised that way. So it's almost like a where do I turn? Like and you feel trapped. So I think that it's something that you have to break down. It might take some family meetings. It might take some um, therapy. It might take some therapy. But I think that first and foremost is understanding that that does not mean that you can't ever slip up because life is always going to life. We see
Mhm.
what's going on now. We see how costs are rising. Just the way that costs rose from 2020 to now was rapidly. So to think that all of that can happen and you never ever miss a beat would almost be like if you were bionic. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Mhm. No, I love what you're saying there. And I think the weird thing with like first big ups to you for that Music Soul Child reference. I was like, I was already hearing the song in my head when you said that. And you're right. I think just sharing that piece right there is how I was raised. It really it was like you just work and you're the provider and I think that is and I'm going to speak for myself all the time on this one in relation, of course. I think that was a hard one for me to navigate and let go. One partly being an Afro Latino, that blood in my system is like, no, you do it all, right? And then there's the pride, like the pride, and then there's the feel good parts of it. right? And those feel good parts of it are probably what control the most of it for me in the space of that pride. Like, all right, I'm I'm paying the rent, my bills are all paid, and I still got money to buy my children clothes, right? And the pride of having that, right? And then there's the moments, because we spoke in our last segment about the ebbs and flows about money, right? And there's the moments when that flow is so high and I can pay the rent, the gas, the groceries, get my son kicks, have the money for his haircuts for the month, right? Like Dennis pops up, got that money. But then there's the ebb of it where maybe the job that I have didn't pay me what the other job used to pay me, right?
Hmm.
And everything's an adjustment, going back to the budget that Nia mentioned in the last, like I'm going back to that and I'm reconstructing it, right? Because they don't align in the same way no more. And I know
Hmm.
that. But I think for me, the hardest part of it, Nia, of letting go of that pride, and I still have some of it, it wasn't the belief that my wife can do the other parts of it and I don't have to always put it on myself. It was
Hmm.
more of like not being able to get the things that I feel I should get for my family,
Mm. Okay. Okay, see, that's
right?
good insight. That's great insight because I don't ever claim to know that like I'm an expert on male ego and because I'm not. I've experienced different clients and I've been doing this for a little while and this is what I have seen. So that's great insight. I appreciate you sharing it. And I'm bringing that song up because it's the heart of what I was saying. Like, and I was raised that same way too. And I mean, even as a black woman, we was taught we gotta be the strong black woman that no matter what
Mm-hmm,
happens, we gotta seguir adelante. So I
hmm.
think that it is important to recognize, okay, you feel like you should be able to do it because that's what you should be able to do for your family, right? Okay.
Hmm.
So that's like the same as saying, like, well, I should be able to go on vacation because I work hard. I should be able to go on
Yeah.
vacation. You should have a fully funded emergency fund. You should
Yeah.
have a well-invested portfolio. You should have a well-maintained budget. This all goes back to mindset and what
Yeah.
you feel like you should do. You see what I'm saying? You should be
Mhm.
clear and not have stress about your finances. You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it's adjusting the mindset. And I don't think it's like, some personal finance people are like all or none or, you know, no Starbucks, all money but no. I say make an adjustment. Well, why can't you do both? Why can't I go to Starbucks some and I invest some also? So just making an adjustment because women do the same thing. I deserve these shoes, but you deserve an emergency fund too. So things like that and shifting the perspective of how you talk about it and how you address it. Yes, you should be able to do those things for your family. Um, you should be able to do a lot of things. You might not always get a chance to do it. It's kind of like when you're younger and you're growing up, your parents don't always say yes. Sometimes you got to hear a no. And it's the same way with life. I would love to go and just be the boss and never have to work my way up. And I got the skills, I got the credentials. I should be able to run that company. But we all know it just doesn't work like that. I have to go through the process
Hmm.
and get there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, you're so right. And and obviously I share that. I share that one sort of vulnerability, but also just like, I don't want me and Nia to have these conversations like I don't go through it, right? And I think part of
Ah, I
right
do
part
too.
yeah, right. And
Yeah.
part of like, cultivating this month and obviously my love for our black and brown people and providing tangible resources and such. And this one for men, right? I want to be honest of what my struggles are and want to speak on mine. And you're right. It's that mindset piece and everything you shared. And I think it's also a little bit of the own bar I put on myself, right? Like it's a
Hmm.
bar that I just think should be there, right? Like it could be there. It's one of those things, and that is the mindset again, right?
Yeah, but I also think it's too because we spend so much time thinking about what we haven't done. We spend so much
Mm,
time thinking about, well, I haven't done this, I haven't done that, that we don't stop and look back 1 year prior, 5 years prior, 10 years prior. Where were we then? What have we done now? What have we accomplished now? What growth has occurred? What maturity has occurred? how much more wealth or more are me and my family able to do? Maybe back then we were strict budget. We eat spaghetti for 3 days. Now we got brown eggs and whole grain. We got Dave's Killer rye bread now. That's
Yeah.
growth. We used to shop at Walmart only and we couldn't shop. Now we're shopping at Target. Believe it or not, those are financial graduations in the sense of we already know when we walk into Target, it's going to be more expensive than Walmart, right? But if that's where we're shopping regularly, that's a financial graduation from before. Maybe we couldn't afford that. So thinking about it and not in the sense of, oh, this is what I should be able to do. But man, damn, look what I did already. Look what I
Mm,
already did. And patting yourself on the back and celebrating that. I mean, and sometimes you need the people around you also. So sometimes it's hard to remember those things because you need the people around you to also celebrate those things with you. But maybe sometimes they need a little reminder, not like in a harsh way, but like, man, you remember when we was, oh, I'm glad we're not there no more. Like, man, I remember doing this, and I had to do that. Like, I don't know. Sometimes thinking about that will help you be like, oh, wow, I guess
mhm.
I did.
Yeah, you're right. It's those baby steps that are really bigger steps that people may like just look at. Oh, I'm just going to Target now to get it. No, you used to be at Aldi's with that. Like,
You used
like
to
you know
not be
that
able to step foot in
is.
Target.
Yeah, and I have a dear friend who always told me that they knew they did better once they can go to the grocery store and get whatever they want.
That's real. That's real.
And
Because it used to
anything
be,
else,
okay, how much? Uh, Tell
mhm,
me how much that costs. And then you got three items still waiting because these are optional items that if it go too high, you
yeah.
can't afford these.
Hmm. And I was gonna say, sorry, I was gonna say that with the stigma of the provider, right? And man, do you feel generationally that has changed, right? Because my I think of my grandfather's generation, full providers, 12 kids in the house. My grandmother
Mm.
didn't even work. He did everything, and that's how he liked it, right? And my father was different because he worked, but my mom worked, and you could kind of see the generational change a little bit.
Mhm.
And so I say that, going to the question generationally, do you feel like that stigma is changing, that males are becoming more aware that they don't have to be the main provider? Like, especially if you have a partner in the home that is working as well, right? Like, you don't have to put all that pressure on yourself like maybe my great grandfather did or my grandfather did. Because he had 12 kids. I'm like, how do he feed 12 mouths, right?
Man.
So, any thoughts on that, Nia?
Well, first, shout out to your grandfather and your grandmother because bless their ministry because 12, that is remarkable. So I think there are some shifts. But I also think that social media pushes one side because it gets ratings and it gets interaction. But I think it's also dependent on who raised you, like, who's helping you heal, who raised you. Because some people still have those old school parents. And I know both sides. I know some people who are married who the husband pays all the bill. I know something. I think that it's based on your relationship and you decide what it is you want to do. I do think that times are different from like back in the day where the father normally worked. Like the economy is different. A lot of times two people need to work now. Like it's not even an option anymore, because of the cost of housing and that's constantly rising. But I also think that there's shifts in the sense that women are working more now. Women are like,
Mhm,
women are getting degrees and they're VPs too now. So I think that that
mhm,
also has caused some shift because before, yes, only the men could work. Women couldn't even get bank accounts in their name until 1974. So
mm,
for 50 years only, we've been able to have a bank account or a credit card in our name without a spouse. That's a huge shift in the financial space in
mhm,
a household. I had to depend on you. I didn't have any other option. Now I have options. So
mhm,
that I think created a shift also in the woman that made them seek. But I feel like you hear both sides. Like, so last thing on that, like you hear the podcasters with the 50-50 and brings to the table conversations. I know you've seen them. They need to start making you sign, do some type of certification to buy microphones. And then you have the other side where they did the challenge where the women played the joke of, oh, I can't pay the mortgage this month. And you had all those husbands who was like, when have you ever? Do you even know
Mm,
how to pay the mortgage or where to pay the mortgage at? So I think
yeah.
it's just based on the households and the families. I think it's a freedom to choose now, whereas to before it wasn't an option.
Yeah, no, I think all that evolution you're speaking of is happening, and it's really, I think evolution for the well, obviously for the better, but I think for the space of evenness, I guess is if that's a word, making it even across the board, and I think and I think of my grandfather, and he was proud. He had a lot of pride to like take care of 12 kids, right? And he didn't want me, my grandmother did all the cooking, cleaning, like that. It was that kind of role. And I
Hmm.
don't know, maybe as I grew up and I found my soulmate, I wanted it to be even, right? And I felt like there was a transitional change in me, an evolution in me, and how I saw that. But then there's still like, my DNA runs deep in me, and some of that is deeply rooted in machismo, to an extent, right? And
I
so
mean,
I'm
and
like trying to tear that out of my DNA to a degree. Like that can't be me no more. I can't think that way, because my wife makes money, my wife has this, and we split things, and and it was I think it was a change that gradually happened. It wasn't overnight, like with all things, right? But I think if there was any challenge in that, when we're speaking of stigma and providers and that, being able to heal yourself by not putting so much pressure on yourself. I think the biggest thing for me was just self-acceptance.
mm-hmm, hmm.
Like
So
the
go
it's
ahead.
like I can't, I'm not gonna pay the gas bill, but wife did. It still got paid.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, and that might be a journey and something to accept. That is, I didn't even think about that, but that's a good point. Like, and that's a battle maybe within yourself of, learning to navigate that. And I think to having more conversations like about those situations might be helpful. But it's definitely something to not, but see, and that's the thing as being a Latino, like muchismo with Latin, yes, it's definitely a thing. That's normal. And so to kind of give a little bit about me on the flip side, I grew up,
Yeah.
my grandparents and grandfather was same thing. They both worked, but he paid all the bills, he handled all the business to the point where their house caught on fire. She didn't even talk to the insurance person. She waited till he got home from work to talk to the insurance person. You know what I'm saying? Where then you take me. I had my daughter. I met her father in grammar school, but he got older and he didn't choose to be a part of her life. So if I had that mentality, we would have been destitute.
Mhm.
I had I couldn't say, oh well, let's wait for the man because the man wasn't doing anything. So I had to step up and do that. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because what other option did I have?
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a kind of you have to do what works best for you and that you thrive in. And that might take a couple conversations. It might take some nudging, some negotiating, some navigating, but you want to find a space that you thrive in your relationship. Because me personally, when I do get in a relationship, I would love for us to live off one income. We'll still have two incomes, but all of our monthly overhead will be based on one income. And the
Mhm.
second will be for leisure and investments. And that investment might be real estate, stocks, a combination of the two that we'll make the decision on what together, but we will live below our means on one income and use the second income to thrive and figure out who, you know what I'm saying? So for
Yeah.
me, that's my mentality, but that's something I've developed as I've navigated this personal finance world. So I feel like your roots and all of that. And I grew up, you couldn't even go in my grandmother's bedroom. Like you weren't even have to be you could be a boy that I just brought. So that's
Yeah.
where I came from. So yeah, I feel like we all make adjustments and we
Mhm.
like kind of shift and change what we do, but ultimately life is short and we want to do what's
Mhm.
making us happy and gets us to a place where we're thriving together.
I appreciate all the gems. Nia's perspective is cooking again on my channel and giving some great gems and thoughts about, just kind of what we're talking about and the space of that stigma of, of I'm the main provider, I do all this, and For me, when I think about this conversation and, when we were talking about it, it resonated for me because I know I've been through those stigmas, right? But I also know that I overcame a lot of those things, like, and it
Hmm.
wasn't easy. Some of it took 5 years, some of it took 10 years, depending on how stubborn I was and how deeply rooted and anchored it was to me. But also, like, I am one with an ambition, right? Like I have a certain ambition or gumption, if you want to call it. And I think that ambition, it goes to what I said maybe in our other segment about like my mentality of like, oh, I'll spend that because I'll make more, right? And I think that also goes hand in hand with this provider mentality, like always having that
Hmm.
money. 'Cause I'm gonna take care of you, right? Like I got you, and I think sometimes for me, I'll speak for myself. It became a little bit of a time warp where
Hmm.
maybe a little stuck in time, a little time moving fast, and some of those times that I'm acknowledging more, and this is the time warp port when all of that is gone and I'm broke. Like, damn, where'd all that money go?
Spent
But
all that money I wish I had.
exactly. So, I think,
Yeah.
we're at the end, towards the end of our segment here. And I know this conversation is more than a 15-minute segment, y'all. So we're just trying to deliver a quick conversation here. Just scratch the surface, really, because I think this is one that can be ongoing in many ways. But being at the end of our segment, we always provide our one, two tangible resources, as you know. I guess in terms of putting it in the space of the pressure our men are feeling by being that provider, right? And you gave a bunch of
Hmm.
different resources and thoughts,
Hmm.
but what are the one, two tangible resources for men around that, whether taking the pressure off or, wherever place you want to take it. But I guess what are your one, two tangible thoughts on that?
So first, I do want to say that I don't think it's anything wrong with a man being a provider in the household. It's just what's decision and what you all decide amongst you.
Hmm.
So my first tangible resource is to kick out the noise. You have to operate in a space that fulfills you. If you're operating based on what society says, but you're miserable, it doesn't matter who's paying what because you're not happy. So I think that if you feel better being a provider and you have to find somebody that you all, these are conversations you should have early,
Yeah.
not a year later after you've moved in together. These are conversations. So I guess I make that my second tangible resource. If you have not had a money conversation with your spouse and you feel this pressure, have a money talk. And that money talk can start off very small. It can, be very subtle and grow. But one, kick out the noise. Two, have a money conversation because you have to do something that thrives. It's kind of like when we're looking for love. A lot of times we look for things, but we don't look for what would really fulfill us. And so if you feel better being that provider, there's nothing wrong with that, but you need somebody that complements you. So you kind of need somebody like you all have that conversation and decide this is what we're doing. This works for both of us and we're good. But kick the noise out because society's not going to come help you with any of the bills that they feel like you should pay.
I love that. And you said something in the beginning there of, and I'm glad you set that like that tone before you answered. And obviously I'm in that same breath of like, in no way is this segment saying don't be a full provider.
No, not at all. I can't
you
tell you
know,
what to do.
exactly. And I think that was beautiful right there and just kind of setting that tone. And then I think, yeah, you're right. I think you could have all the money and be that great provider, but if you're unhappy, none of that matters.
Mm-mm, it doesn't.
Right? And then the gem of like some men just are born providers, right? Like that is like in their DNA. They're the head of the wolf pack or lion den, whatever way you want to call it, and they can't
Hmm.
shake that off. That's just naturally who they are. And what I love what you said about that person specifically is like when you're finding that partner, make sure that they're ready for that person. Like,
Hmm.
if that's who you are and that's where you're standing on, then stand on that, but find a person who stands with you on that.
Exactly. That compliments
Right.
you. Absolutely.
And then the conversations, and I think that is a great piece of advice for just married couples, right?
Oh
Because as
yeah.
much as they talk,
They don't
I
really
would
talk
love
about
to
money.
exactly like,
They
how much
don't.
does that happen, especially if it's going good?
Even good or bad. I've seen both. And it's
Yeah.
just not something because a lot of us weren't raised to talk about money. We just weren't raised to talk about it. Wasn't, we didn't really have money conversations growing up. I know for me personally and a lot of my clients, I haven't met one client who had like official conversations that they, okay, let's talk. This was going on with this. This is what's going on with that. And some people feel like that's checking in, or it's not checking in. I like feeling secure about where I live. Like if it's a problem with it, I would like to know. And then also that if you're in a relationship, especially if you're married, that's your helpmate. So
Mm.
if you have something, express it, but see, some people feel like if she has to help me, but she's helping you anyway. If you're the provider and she's taking care of the household, isn't she helping you? Anybody who said they did it by themselves, they lying. Because both of the people have equal parts and different parts and play their role, which is a part of the whole ecosystem. So it's just, I think it's that you got to do what's best for you in the end of the day.
Yep. And you're so right. Like, all my success came from help, different communities. Like I did a lot of work on my own. Don't get me wrong, Nia. Like I did a lot of work on my own, but I also had community who supported me to like, they were sometimes the bridge to my success.
Mm,
When my success was in deep waters, they were like appearing as peers to
mm,
get across, right? And you're so right in that. It feel like there's another question I want to dive into, but I know we're at our end of our segment. And yeah, I have to bring Nia back because that last piece you mentioned wanted me to go and I was like, let's talk about taboo and money and growing up, right?
oh,
And especially in a black
yeah.
and brown family. And it's all
Hmm.
these different things that got layers. So I got to bring you back. I got to bring you back to talk a little bit about that. But I'm gonna go ahead and give Nia's perspective a little camp clap around. Thank you for coming through and blessing us with the gems again. Everything you share is so insightful, so on point. I really appreciate your passion and how much your words really, touch me. Like as much as like I bring different people in, different professionals and experts, I bring them in also to learn. Like I'm not, my learning hasn't stopped. It continues
Ever.
as I grow. So Nia, thank you again. It's Friday. It's all about Friday transformation. So get your self-care moments in this weekend. That's what it's about. So the other part of it, this month is all about men, mind, body, the blueprints of well-being. All these different segments you're going to catch is all men focused because I really wanted to deliver some gems for my men who check out these segments. But of course, in May, I'm going to switch it up as I always do. We got mental health awareness coming up, and I am going to blow it up during that time with a bunch of different folks who are coming to the platform. So thank you, Nia's perspective. I'm going to share a bunch of links. You can check her channel out, but also check her out on my channel. And you know what the last words are. Who's helping you heal, y'all? Peace.